everyone. Welcome to our first Dharma talk of our New Year's retreat. And today we will begin with three sounds of the bell and a short settling sit. So make yourselves comfy. So thank you, dear Sangha, for assembling for our first Dharma talk. Today's presentation will be given by My Tong and Karen Hillsberg. I live with Mai, who is quite a wonder, born in Vietnam and immigrating basically by herself at age 12 to the United States. She has a foot firmly planted in both cultures. She has a voracious appetite for learning and an immense ability to embrace many things at once and to see the whole, to see the goodness and the possibilities in each moment. She's an avid gardener, a brilliant simultaneous translator with a love of Thay's words that has brought us all tremendous happiness to take a sneak peek into the world of the Vietnamese language, Sanghas. And she's a founding member of Sugar Plum Sangha, lives here at Mariposa, where she has created two stupendous gardens, almost single-handedly with Jonathan's muscles. Our other presenter today is Karen Hillsberg, a Dharma teacher in the Plum Village tradition, who received the lamp in 2012. I first met Karen in 2004 when she and her beautiful family, two young children and husband, attended winter retreat in Deer Park. And in between then and now, she has made many, many transformations. She's the mother of two marvelous human beings who consider her to be the mother par excellence in their own words. She was widowed when the children were very young and had a lot of transforming to do and a lot of shuffling to be really present for her children at the same time of her major change in her life. She's a licensed clinical psychologist who for many years worked with people in the county of Los Angeles. And she has a thirst for scholarship. She has been taken under the wing of the Venerable at Deer Park, for whom she has edited his books and traveled with him to Australia as an ordained nun for a short while. I'm so glad to have her and as my friends and my mentors. So I will turn the the talk over to Karen with one sound of the bell.
Thank you for the beautiful introductions. I'll just give a quick overview of what we're going to do in the next 90 minutes, and then I'll see if Mai would like to go first. We're going to share on the topic of our lineage, our past, and how our spiritual ancestors have lit the lamp for us. And we're going to give introductions and then share a little exercise and some reflections. And then we'll share a little bit more, and then we'll share a practice of touching the earth, and then wrap up. So we won't be talking at you for 90 straight minutes. We'll make this interactive. And Mai, would you like to go first with the introduction?
Dear Thay, dear friends, can you hear me okay? Yeah. So thank you everyone for being here, and thank you Joanne for giving the introductions, and Karen for being here with me as well. So as I reflecting on this talk about themes of the past and the roots that we have, I was my glasses is fogging up. I was reflecting on how certain things I take for granted because I come from two different cultures, and certain thing in the Vietnamese culture sounds like, oh, everyone does that, that in some way it become a strength that I might not have known about unless I have another culture to reflect upon the difference. When I first encountered Thay's teaching back in my late 20s, and to hear him speak in Vietnamese, and at that time I was not speaking Vietnamese as much, I was using more English, and it was just like, oh, something's really opening deep within to hear my mother language. But not only that, it's the kind of teaching that helps me touch something so much deeper than what just the language itself, but something touching a yearning inside of peace and of knowing myself, knowing the different parts of myself more. So I think since then I was kind of hooked on listening to all the Dhamma talks in Vietnamese, and there are hundreds of them. There's so many winter series, and I felt like, yeah, my understanding of the tradition has improved so much just because I have a little bit more of the background of what happened throughout the different centuries, at least to the lineage. Also reading the poems of the different founding ancestors to see that what I've been transmitting from one teacher to another. Some of the stories that I really enjoyed, that I had no idea, like, oh, these were something that happened in this piece of land in Asia, in Vietnam, that was not totally the same Vietnam right now. The country border was different, and they were like going invading back and forth the neighboring countries. But it's like, oh, there's certain things that happened back then that, also give rise to what happened in this lineage, and somehow it's like thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago, and these things still directly affecting us today. So some of the teachers that I I thought about that through Thay's very skillful storytelling, it's kind of make me understand it a little bit more. Like this, the story of these king. You might have heard of the bamboo forest teachers, which was actually the king, the king Trần, I think Trần Nhân Tông. That was the king, and he helped with bringing three different main schools of Buddhism in Vietnam back then, and he lived in around the 12, don't call me exactly, but it's like in the 12th century. And his love for the teachings, he combined these three different schools together of Vô Ngôn Tông, and that guy was in the Vô Ngôn Tông, I think in the early 5th, maybe 8th century, I think. And then there was another school that came from India by Vinita Rishi. That was from 580 AD, like in the early 6th century, and he came from India to Vietnam to transmit the teaching. Well, he went to China first, and then he went to Vietnam. And there was the other school from the lineage Zen school too that came. And of course, there was Master Tang Hoi that was in the Vietnam in the 2nd century, and with him, there was a lot of translations of many different sutra, especially the Anapanasati Sutra. So I just feel like really appreciating like how these people of different cultures, knowing different languages and able to bring that was most precious, was really beautiful about teaching of the Buddha, like to another culture and able to adapt to the culture there. I remember some stories of like when Master Tang Hoi was kind of in Vietnam, but back then in China, in this part of China, the king weren't so nice to Buddhism, and a lot of monks have to either disrobed or cannot be monastics at all. And then Master Tang Hoi was able to come to China and bring his teaching over, and kind of help create more of the Buddhism culture and make it more acceptable. And that throughout many different centuries, where you see the rise and fall of kings and the rise and fall of the preference and the non-preference of the dynasty towards certain school of Buddhism. Some of them might disappear completely, and then some of them get the favor of the royal people, and then they're able to become more expanded. So it's kind of interesting with the history and what we have, what we landed in. And luckily in Vietnam in the 12th century, the first king was the grandpa king. His name was Trần Thái Tông, and I felt like he suffered a lot as a king. Like even when he was young, in his like teenage year, become married to this queen, this princess, supposed to be queen soon. And then through his uncle, then there's all these political intrigue and make him become king. And then the uncle said, well, you can't marry your sweetheart because she's not having kids yet. She's like around 16. So now you're gonna marry your pregnant sister-in-law, another princess, like the older princess. She's already pregnant with the 3 months pregnant with the kids of the older brother of the king. So it's like I'm taking my sister-in-laws, to be the queen, demote my lover into a princess, and just like a lot of suffering to be a king like that, starting out like that. And he has to run away to the mountains to study Buddhism with. He has a chance to study Buddhism with, I think, Master Đạo Vinh at that time, in the mountain in Vietnam. So, and there was a rebel from his brother as well taking away the wife. So that was pretty intense, and I was able to learn Buddhism a little bit and calm it down, but the teacher there told him to come back to the court, but then still able to learn Buddhism. So throughout his life, I saw that he was really wanting to transform all the suffering that he had. Um, and it's not easy being a king, I'm sure. And there was a guilt too from the person who they had to take down the previous king through his uncle's maneuvers. So they had to take down the previous king, which was kind of nice to the family. And that king has to commit suicide, even though that king wanted to be just a regular lay person in a monastery. So there's the guilt of this new king about the previous king dying in a sad circumstance like that. So I see that he really put forth a lot of effort into studying Buddhism, and that kind of bear fruits in that there was a lot more of the popular of Buddhisms in the country, in these schools of Buddhisms, and that's when like his son, no, his grandson, Jung Tong, like it's within a couple of decades, his son will become the king, and after that he abdicate his throne to his son, so he can become a full-time monastics and go travel and make friends with the kings of the neighboring countries and teachings elsewhere, and create this school of bamboo forest, which I don't know. There's something about a king that give away everything to step down from all his life of luxuries, but even while he was king, he was still pursuing as a lay person, pursuing the teaching of the Buddha, so that he created this the touching of the earth, but back then it was called more of the repentance. And he did this 6 times a day. Every 4 hours he will be in touch, bow down, and just really reflect on his thoughts, speech, and actions. What have I done in the past 4 hours as a king, as a ruler? Have I been kind? So when I heard that story from Thay, I was really moved that, in history there was such a person who really are yearning to live a mindful life, a life of right conduct, and really put forth efforts into reconciliations and of different countries, and healing the divisions between people, that inspire a whole nations to follow and study Buddhism. And that was in my heritage. That's in my heritage, more than 900 years ago. So it's like, sometimes it's really nice to go back in history and see that there are examples of the forefathers, parents who have gone forth and create conditions that centuries later that I am benefiting from, that Thay has been benefiting from, and Thay transmit his teaching to us. So yeah, it's just some part of something really simple that I find that by studying history throughout the ages, even though we have to kind of see history can also be told in a different, depends on whose views, but just to get the essence of, there are people who have really tried hard to live their life simply, to live their life with good conducts, and to be kind. That was enough for me to touch that. So I just want to maybe pause my sharing here and hand it to Karen, so we can enjoy more of these kind of what story that touch us about the teachings and the lineage.
Thank you, Mai. That's a beautiful sharing about your culture and your lineage. And I come to this from a very different culture and lineage. I have Jewish roots in Eastern Europe. And in my upbringing, I was looking for something more spiritual than what was available to me as a Jewish practitioner. And so in my 20s or so, I started searching, and that's how I came to meet Thay and begin my practice in mindfulness. And actually, I'd like to just share a little poem to start with. I wrote this last year when I was going through some personal difficulties. My parents decided to split up after 58 years of marriage. Because I was searching, I found my path. I was confused, depressed, suffering, wanting peace of mind. Because I met my teacher, I learned to meditate, read the teachings, found a community. Because I am made of water, I began to feel the sound of the bell vibrate in my body. I began to see that I am also made of earth and fire and air. I am made of time and space, past, present, and the future. Because I have seen this, I cannot unsee it. I could choose to ignore it, but I choose not to. I choose to live in truth and reality, which means change and death, illness and loss. Because there is no escape, I can only learn from my experiences and maintain my integrity, my vows, my promise to help others when I can. Because people love their suffering and misery loves miserable company, there is nothing I can do sometimes except try not to make the situation worse. Because I have a practice, I can come back to myself and shut the doors and windows in the midst of the storm, light the fire in my heart, be still, and heal. So this kind of reflects my personal journey from when I started on the path in 1993 up until then, which was last year before I went to Australia. And I was fortunate to be introduced to Thay by a friend who knew that I was searching. And I got to attend a day of mindfulness here in California, and that started me and my husband on the path of practice. And we pretty much practiced privately for about 10 years before becoming a part of the Sangha and starting a local Sangha. And then we were mentored and took the 14 mindfulness trainings in 2004. And then, as Joanne mentioned, I received the lamp in 2012 and then had an opportunity to go to Australia in 2019 with the Venerable Thich Phuoc Tin and be ordained as a temporary monastic for 2 weeks. So I was really fortunate. That was a once in a lifetime experience to take the 10 novice precepts and to live in a monastery in the True Klam in the bamboo forest tradition. And when I was getting ready to disrobe, the Venerable asked me to maintain my vows and continue to practice. And I was confused because he knew I was returning to lay life. I forgot to set my timer here. He said he hoped that I would continue to practice in the spirit of the precepts. If I couldn't do it in the formal way in a monastery in robes, I could do it in the spirit of maintaining those vows. So that was an invitation to me to bring this practice into my householder life. And as Joanne mentioned, I've had the opportunity to be close with the Venerable and to provide service as far as redacting his teachings into English. And I've just learned so much from him, as I've learned a lot from Thay, um, about our lineage and the fact that it's really been unbroken from the Buddha to us. And in spite of all the different cultures and wars and historical problems, people have continued to practice and to share the teachings and to pass them down really from person to person through the years. And I just find that very powerful, the fact that we are an actual true continuation of the Buddha's teachings and all the ancestors, and that there has been this handing down from person to person and generation to generation, as Mai was talking about the history of Buddhism in Vietnam. I was reminded of how the teachings moved from India to China. And that was something I spent a lot of time studying and learning about as I helped the Venerable to share this sutra, the 42 chapter sutra, in English. And he has a book in Vietnamese, but I helped him to do this book in English. And I learned a lot about the 42 chapter sutra. And basically, it was the first sutra that was presented in Chinese for a Chinese audience. So the myth is that the teachings were translated by some monks from Sanskrit into Chinese. But actually, I think historically what really happened was some monks presented the teachings in Chinese for a Chinese audience, using Chinese culture, Chinese folklore, Chinese beliefs in order to make the teachings more accessible. And this is something that's happened in the transmission of Buddhism through all different kinds of countries. The teachings have changed and become very organic for that culture. And that's something, of course, that Thay has been renowned for, has been bringing the teachings to the West and making the teachings accessible for Westerners like myself in the 20th century, and tailoring the teachings to our specific times and place. And there were a couple things I wanted to share from this book. This part is just about the teachers and the teachings, and the Venerable shared that a talented Buddhist teacher has the ability to take one teaching or even one sentence from the teaching and share that wisdom across time and space. That teaching can travel for hundreds or even thousands of years. When the teaching contains profound wisdom, even if it is translated into different languages, that wisdom can be passed down for generations. There are even teachers who have not attained arhatship, but who have great insight, who lead a life of virtue, and who practice with diligence. Their words, too, can spread widely and deeply and touch the hearts of people throughout history. So I just find it somewhat amazing how these teachings can have and can traverse from 2,600 years ago in India, through China, through Vietnam, into the West, into our hearts here in the 21st century, from Sanskrit and Pali to Chinese to Sino-Vietnamese to English, French, and be available for us now and relevant for us now. So that's a little bit about my personal story and how the teachings have touched my life. And now we thought we'd have a little exercise where people can spend a few minutes to write about how the teachings have touched your life, whether it's through Thay and how you came to know Thay and Thay's teachings, or whether it's has to do with the Buddha or your own root teachers. Like once I became very involved with Buddhism, I was able to go back around to my Jewish roots and learn and find a lot more in my Jewish roots that I hadn't even known was there. And that's something that Thay is very clear about, that he believes that we should embrace our own personal roots while we also embrace our spiritual ancestors. Um, so we thought maybe we'd take about 3 minutes and you could draw something or write something about what's deep in us, what has lit the lamp of the teachings within us, how we interact with the Buddha within us, or any memory of Thay or our personal connection with Thay or the Sangha or the Dharma. And I'll just see if if you'd like to add something else for this exercise. So in this second part of my sharing, I was thinking of sharing a little bit about the history of our ancestral teachers, and I thought Mai did a very good job of talking about the Vietnamese ancestry. And I think just to give a sense of the scope of and the vast history that we have that goes back 2,600 years, I would just um, share a little bit about our teachers. The Buddha, of course, is the original teacher. And then the bodhisattvas, who are not necessarily historical figures, strictly speaking, although they have manifestations as historical figures. And then there were the Buddha's, direct disciples like Mahashikyapa, Shariputra, Mahamaggalana, Upali Ananda, Mahagotami, which was his aunt, who he ordained as a bhikkhuni. And then, as Mai said, after the Buddha and the Buddha's disciples and the teachers in India, the Dharma came into China, and that's where the 42 chapter sutra comes in, and that was in probably around 300 CE. Bodhidharma is credited with bringing the Dharma into China, but historically there's evidence that the Dharma was in China before Bodhidharma. And it's interesting because the initial Buddhist teachers and monastics and lay people, well, especially the monastic Sangha, they were wanderers, and they walked around a lot, and they shared the teachings in India and China and other countries. But then there was a movement in China to start localizing the monastic Sangha in temples. And so they started to settle down, and that made it easier for them to have a following in the areas where they lived, and also to start writing down the teachings. Because before that, with the wandering community, it was very hard to start writing down the teachings. So when they had temples it was easier to be supported by the lay practitioners, to write down the teachings, to have more stability in the practice. It also made them targets because people wanted their land, and there were, you know, problems over time, but often the monastic sangha would become wanderers again, and when there were harsh rulers or monarchs or political situations that didn't support Buddhism, they would, you know, kind of go underground, and then when and keep practicing and keep teaching, and then when things were more favorable, they would start it with the monasteries again. So I'm not going to repeat what Mai said about the ancestral teachers in China and Vietnam, but I did want to share with you, just to give you a little sense of the lineage. This is from a book called Zen's Chinese Heritage, The Masters and Their Teachings. And this is just a chart of just the Buddhist teachers who came out of the Chinese tradition, starting with Bodhidharma in 536 approximately. And I know it's teeny tiny, but basically it just shows a lot of teachers and schools. And we are here on this little branch. That's Lin Chi, and then the Buddhist teachers in Southeast Asia. And this is just from 867 down to 1100. So the point is, there were all these teachers, and they had students, and the students had students, and there was a continual transmission of the teachings through the ancestors. And the teachings, you know, changed over time and were refined by people, like in the same way that Thay has tried to revolutionize Buddhism and correct mistakes in the teachings or make them more relevant for our times. Other teachers throughout history have done that as well. So the Venerable says that the teachings have gotten more and more and more refined and clarified over time. Let's see. I wanted to also just share a beautiful little writing by Sister Annabelle, who talks about the Tu Hu lineage, which is our lineage. And actually it means loving kindness or filial piety. And I'm just going to read two little paragraphs that she wrote about our history in the Tu Hu lineage. When I was allowed by my teacher to receive the transmission of abbotship, it was a happy moment. I never felt that I was receiving a heavy responsibility to do great work. I felt that I was being given an opportunity to open myself up to all the virtuous qualities of my own teachers, ancestral teachers. It is my deepest aspiration to realize those qualities in my daily life, although I know I cannot do so in any great or important way. I knew that my teacher, that would be Thay, embodied these virtuous qualities and was allowing me to have some insight into what those qualities were. This insight came to me as I touched the earth. The Tu Hu is the name of the temple where the Dhyana master of Plum Village was ordained as a novice. Anyone who has received the transmission of the 5 mindfulness trainings from the Dhyana master of Plum Village, or from a Dharmacharya who has received the lamp transmission from the Dhyana master of the Plum Village, belongs to the Tu Hu lineage. And I thought I would just read one more quick thing from the Venerable that kind of shares that same sentiment. You know, speaking for myself, being brought up in the West, there's a big focus on individualism and, you know, people and ego and all that. But these teachers like Sister Annabelle and the Venerable, they just really talk about being a link in this long, long chain from our ancestors to the future. And I just find that so beautiful. In the dedication of this book on the 42 Chapter Sutra, The Venerable says, I respectfully vow to the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, in the 10 directions, with sincere regret for any mistakes we have made in interpreting the Buddha's teachings. I also bow in respect to my spiritual ancestors and teachers for supporting my evolution as a monk and for helping me to open my eyes to the Buddha Dharma. I am grateful to my parents for giving me life so that I can serve all living beings. I would like to thank all my spiritual friends near and far who are living and who have passed away. Finally, it is my prayer that everyone who comes in contact with the 42 Chapter Sutra will gain valuable insight and wisdom, will realize their own true nature, will achieve enlightenment, and will complete the path of liberation. And I'll just end on this note that, according to the Buddha and our ancestral teachers, we all have the Buddha nature within us. It's not something that the Buddha invented. It's something that he discovered as a function of being a human being. And he taught that everybody, every human being has that Buddha nature within. So it's not something that somebody outside of us has to teach us or show us or tell us. It's something within us that we can learn, with help from others and the teachings to awaken within ourselves. So I think that's one of the really beautiful things about Buddhism that appeals to me, is seeing the Buddha nature, the possibility of Buddha nature in everybody, even people who seem to be what we might consider bad people. They all still have that seed of Buddha nature, and we, even if we feel that we're bad people, we have that seed of Buddha nature as well. So with that, I'll pass it back over to Mai. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for sharing that. Can always count on Karen's for more historical footnotes. um, I was reflecting the other day of how sometimes we feel like in America we have such a big mixture of so many different cultures that when we talk about American culture, we would be like, what is that? What is the things that's the common, that's something you can see, like, oh, maybe American pie, or no, I mean apple pie and ice cream. Maybe that's an American thing. I don't know. Um, but yeah, it's just sometimes like when I think of like things I take for granted as like, certain customs in my countries that's been around for thousands of years. Certain kind of cakes, earth cakes that we make during the New Year, and the way that we will always have plate of food for the ancestor, for ancestors to eat first before we do. It's just something that just enter my consciousness, and I think of it as the norms, but it is not in other cultures, and yeah, so it kind of makes me think a bit more of like, oh, what can I be connecting to in this American culture? Um, Sometimes I feel like there's so much difference that it's hard to take roots in the land, in the people, in the commonness of things. And I was just kind of reminded of um, this small story from Thay that kind of makes me reminds me of what are the things that are very common, ordinary in life, but actually that's becoming part of my roots. That's really entering me in a way that I don't see. So, for example, Thay has this cute stories about how his students want to replace this really rickety old table that he used in his little hut. He's been using it for years, and it's about to break apart. It's just very shaky, and the students They always want to replace that one, but the Thay would say, no, I can still use that table. It still stands. And you know, I've written many books that you're reading on this table, on this companion of mine. So for him, it's a friend, that table. It has a kind of sentimentality to him, and that he treasures it. And it's the same with his, like, this old car that he was using back in Paris in this, I think, in the 70s, where like this car, you know, was so old, breaks apart many times, but yet, you know, they still trying to use it, and then finally it just totally breaks down, and they had to send it to the graveyard. And Thay wrote, dedicated a poem for the car, just to wish it, you know, wish it well, and thank you it for serving him all these years. And it really, I don't know, really touched something in me. Like, how many times when I throw away something in the trash, do I write a poem for these things? Do I send my gratitude and my treasure, like, thank you for being here all this time with me? So, yeah, it's some kind of relishing the smallness, the simpleness of things in life that have gone through us through time, spending its energy and materials and generosity with us in that way, and it become part of us. It enters our consciousness, um, but we might not acknowledge. I was reflecting similarly, just like yesterday. I was making yogurt and using milk, and I just like looking at this liquid that come out of this bottle, and all of a sudden it hits me like, wait, this thing is alive. It came from a creature. It came from a cow. You know, this big thing that walks on four legs, is hundreds of pounds, and eats a lot and poops a lot. But it's, you know, it's from something that's alive, and it's this white liquid. Even though I see in my normal concept of it, oh, this is things in the bottle, something I drink, and something, you know, useful for this and that, but I don't acknowledge it as something alive. And and yeah, it just like raised in me like, ah, I wonder how that cow feels. I wonder, um, you know, what's the quality of life. And there's a lot of just care, as just a thing, but as another living being. um, and I think that's the same way I can also see other things that I use a lot, and know and seeing that this yurt that was built by many hands from decades ago. Who were these people? Who touched these woods? Who shaped them? Who fixed the roof, the leaks in the roof, and who might have slipped off the roof or something? Like all these things that have came before me that I might not have noticed. Um, and just to be present with that, um, then I can see that even in just the simple things, I can have so many roots. I can be in touch with what is also so much older than me, that have um, been through life so much longer than me. I just walk outside, pick a rock, and this is like, this is probably older than everyone in the room right here. This little rock. So it's just kind of humbling to see that there's so much there when we look, that we actually have a whole treasure, that we're not destitute, that we don't have anything, that we don't have any roots. So I think that's why, when Thais introduced the touching the earth practices, I was really touched by the different kinds of ancestors that we have, not just in our blood families, but the spiritual teachers who have preserved the teaching and really live their life the best way they know how, to bring us to invigorate in us, to refresh us and remind us that there's something really deep that is so good, that is so beautiful, that is so kind about each of us. So so I think maybe we can enjoy these kind of the earth touching. That's what we were planning to have. And these are the earth touching that I took from the video we watched maybe a couple weeks ago. But these are when the earth touching were recently adapted back then in the 90s. So these were still very new practices. Um, but yet they feel so old now in this tradition, but it is new in that and it's very fresh. So I thought I might introduce you to the spirit of that practice now. There are 5 earth touchings, and if Karens want to include the 6th earth touching, feel free as well. um, so maybe we can invite a bow to. Oh, maybe we can do a quick demonstration of the earth touching in case anyone who's not used to earth touching. With Jonathan or wants to demonstrate? So yeah. He's behind the camera, so usually with the earth touching, it's the main thing of it is really to have the forehead and the arms, 2 hands and 2 feet on the floor. So basically 5 parts of your body touching the ground. That's just the basic of it, and then you can invite it in however different creative combinations. But usually when we invite the bow, Jonathan will be in that position. And we can bow to touch the earth if you're able to touch in that positions, or you can find a creative way of just really letting your heart sink to be in touch with the earth, so that we can connect through time and space with our roots, of our spiritual roots, our blood ancestors, and of the land ancestors. So then usually when he's on the ground, I could invite a half sounds of the bell, and then that's the finishing of the reflection of the touching of the earth, and then we stand up and bows, and then we can invite another touching of the earth. Sometimes we can also do it just on our knees. We don't want to get up all the way. We might get dizzy, so we can just do it halfway, just on our knees and then bows down. Or even if you're sitting, you can find some way to ground your feet or your hands and touching the, the, the walls, or to touch something that's grounding to connect you to that energy. I think the part here is it's sometimes like when people invite the touching the earth, you have to go through the pace of the touching the earth and the reading. But really what it is to see the form and then write your own touching of the earth, to really practice it and see like what are the ancestors that really touch us. Like we don't come just from this Buddhist tradition, we come from Jewish tradition, from like Tibetan Buddhism, or from so many different other cultures. And there are these people that you really connect to. So these are the people that you can add in to these ancestors of your spiritual or your blood ancestor. You really just add that in that space. And to be there to connect to, this is what Thay said, that what the earth touching about is to bow down to all the generation of ancestors, so that I can be in touch with what is brightest, dearest, kindest, and most beautiful in me and in the deep roots of my ancestral lineage. So That really is the energy of it that we can invite up to be in touch with, and to feel that during when we're on the ground, when we feel really vulnerable. But it's an act of really surrendering to that energy, to that flow through us. So without further, I think we can just try it and see. And so I will invite everyone to stand up. And if you have a rug or something comfortable that you can bend down on your knee, that would be nice for your knee as well. So, in gratitude, I bow to all generation of my ancestors in my blood family, so I can be in touch with all that is brightest, dearest, kindest, and most beautiful in me, and the deep roots of my ancestral lineage and homeland. I bow to the earth so that the understanding and empathy between us are deep. So now please bow down to touch the earth. I see my mother and father, whose blood, flesh, and vitality are present and flowing in my own veins and nourishing its cells in my body. Through my mother and father, I am in touch with my grandparents from both sides, who are entering me in me with all the energies, dreams, expectations, as well as the wisdom and energy transmitted from so many generations of ancestors. I carry in me the life, the blood, experience, wisdom, happiness, and sorrows of all previous generations in me. The weaknesses that are still present, I am practicing to transform for myself and for all of my ancestors. And the energy of insight, of love, and experience that you have transmitted to me, I open my heart, my flesh and bones to receive. I have my roots in my mother, my dad, grandpa, grandma, and ancestors. I am only the continuation of this ancestral flow. So please support and protect me and send me your energy. I know whenever we have children and grandchildren, the ancestors are there also. I know that any parents or grandparents also love, take under the wing, and support their children, even though when they were alive they encounter many difficulties and unfortunate situations that they're not always able to express their love and protection skillfully to us. I see my parents, grandparents, elders, and many generations of founders and protectors of the land who have opened the border, lighted up the country, and preserved the mountains and the rivers, shaped and molded a way of life that is based on gratitude, faithfulness, kindness, joy, confidence, and respect. I am a continuation of my ancestors. I bow deeply and receive the energy of the ancestors to flow through me. Please support and protect me and send me your energy. Please rise. gratitude, I bow to all generation of ancestors in my spiritual family, so I can be in touch with all that is brightest, dearest, kindest, and most beautiful in me and in the roots of my ancestral lineage. I bow to the earth so that the understanding and empathy between us is deep. Please touch the earth. I see my teachers in me. I see Thay in me. I see the one who has shown me how to love and understand, who has shown me how to breathe, smile, forgive, and live deeply in the present moment. I see the transmission of the Dhamma and the practice in me, and these nourishing elements of my spiritual life has been passed down by my teachers. I see through my teachers I am in touch with many generations of awakened teachers throughout time and traditions. I see the Buddha and the Bodhisattva who began my spiritual family 2600 years ago. I see the Buddha as my teacher and also my spiritual ancestor. I see in myself also the healing energies of the Buddha, of Thay, of founding teachers and many awakened teachers, and these energy of the ancestor enters me. The energy creates peace, calm, joy, understanding, and loving kindness in myself. I see the Buddha's teaching have reached my blood family for thousands of years, have beautified and made kinder the lives of many ancestors in my country. I know if the Buddha, Thay, and all these spiritual ancestors who weren't there, I would not know the way to practice to bring peace and happiness into my life, to my family and society. So I open my heart, flesh, and bones to receive these experiences, love, and wisdom and protection, and the energy of understanding and compassion from the Buddha and from many generations of awakened teachers in my spiritual family. I know that I am the continuation of their teaching and the community of practice over many generations. I ask these spiritual ancestors to transmit to me their infinite source of energy, peace, stability, and understanding. I vow to use this energy to practice so that I can transform the suffering in myself and in the world, and to transmit the energy to future generations of practitioners. Please rise. In gratitude, I bow to this land, to the mountains, to the rivers, to the air, and to all the ancestors who made this land available so I can be in touch with the soul of the land. I bow to the earth so that the understanding and empathy between us are deep. Please touch the earth. I see that I am laying down on this land. I am nourished by this land and benefits from all the efforts of living beings who have made life easy and possible for me. I see all those with recognizable names and those who are nameless, but who had quietly brought forth their talents, their wisdom, their perseverance and love, who have made this country into a refuge for people of so many origins and colors. I see those who have worked hard to grow food, who create markets, who sing, who play, who rest, who build roads, hospitals, schools, and a roof over our home, who protect, teach, and serve all beings, who observe nature, who learn the healing arts and nurture sick creatures back to health, who develop science and technology, those who said kind words and immerse others with their generosity, and bring people together beyond borders, language, and labels. I am in touch with all the ancestors who have lived on this land and knew the ways to live in peace and harmony with nature, living in balance with the mountains, the forests, animals, vegetations, and minerals of the land. I feel the energy of this land penetrating my body and soul, accepting me and lending me support. I vow to continue to maintain and preserve this flow of energy, to support the land, the air, the streams, the oceans, and animals. I vow to contribute my part in transforming the violence, the hatred, and ignorance that are still lying deep in the collective consciousness of this country and society, so that the future generation after me can dwell in happiness, joy, and peace. So please support and protect me and send me your energy. Please rise. In gratitude and compassion, I bow down to transmit the energy I received to those I love, so I can be in touch with all that is brightest, dearest, kindest, and most beautiful in both of us. I bow to the earth so that the understanding and empathy between us are deep and connecting. Please touch the earth. With all these limitless energy and love that I have received, now I want to share that with my father. I want to transmit that to my mother, to Thay, and to everyone I love, to all those who have suffered, who have worried, and were sad because of my clumsiness and mistakes in the past. They too have also suffered because of their own difficulties. I see that they have suffered because they were not lucky enough to have an environment that could encourage their full potentials. I vow to share these sources of energy to encourage the strength in my mother and my father, my brothers, sisters, husband, wife, partner, my children, and all the friends around me, so that the pain in their heart will be soothed and transformed, so that they can smile, so that they can feel the joy of being alive, so that they can be healthy in the body and peaceful in the heart. With all my heart, I wish for them to be happy and know peace. I know that when they are happy, I will also be happy. In my heart, in this moment, there is no blaming or resentment toward them. I pray that all the ancestors in my blood and spiritual families to send and support the energy to all these people I love, and all these people who I promise to love and care for. I see that I am not separate from these people in the flow of life. I am one with the ones I love. Please stand up. In understanding and compassion, I bow down to reconcile myself with all those who have made me suffer, so I can be in touch with all that is brightest, dearest, kindest, and most beautiful in both of us. I bow to the earth so that the understanding and empathy between us are deep and connecting. Please touch the earth. understanding to everyone who had made me suffer and all the challenging encounters that can have a destabilizing influence on my life. I know that these people have themselves undergone a lot of suffering and that they couldn't transform and spill the pain of anger and hatred in their hearts to others. I touch that pain and feel its sorrows and see that anyone who suffered that much since childhood will also make those around him or her suffer. I know they might have been unlucky in life and gone through many hardships and abuses and did not feel cared for or loved by others. I know they did not have the chance to encounter the teachings and mindful practice to come back home, but have accumulated wrong views about life, about me, and about us, so that they had caused suffering for me and the people I love. I pray to my ancestors in my blood and spiritual family to send the energy of love and protection to these people, so that their heart will be able to open and receiving the healing balms of love and blossom for maybe the first time in their lives. I pray that they can transform and experience the joy of living so they can let go of the hatred and anger in their heart and won't continue to make themselves suffer and others suffer. I, I wish for all those who had caused hardships and difficulties for my family and country, even for the invaders, the land stealers, the pirates, even those who are cruel, selfish, and lying, and that they too will receive the blessing of the Buddha and the ancestors so they can transform the suffering. I see that they are carrying the suffering throughout many generations, and I do not want to hold on to any feelings of hatred, ignorance, and anger in myself toward them for generations. I do not want them to suffer. I have roots in my blood family and spiritual family, and my heart is opened like a flower. I vow to let go of the vengeance and hatreds and ask all my ancestors to help these people to be free from the bondage of hatred and suffering so they too can feel the joy of life and peace. I ask all my ancestors to send forth the energy of love and of understanding to help these people transform and help me forgive them. So please be my witness, dear Buddha, dear my parents, grandparents, and all my ancestors. Please stand up. And with there is also the sixth earth touching in case we have many different spiritual roots that we want to get in touch with as well. Um, do you want to share that too, Karen? If not, it's okay. We can send this another time. So as we are standing up, we can also just bow to the energy of the room and to all our friends who are here because all the ancestors are here who give us this body. We actually come from another person. It's a miracle. And to have this body and to have this body of teaching as well to aid us on our path. So with this next sound of bell, we can really cherish that feelings that thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being on this path of wanting to realize something so good and something so beautiful in yourself and in the community together.